All right, guys, I'm sorry I wasn't able to be here today, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to give this presentation over how a bill becomes a law. And you guys, as you watch this, take some notes down over the different parts of how a bill becomes a law. You guys have already watched the I'm Just a Bill video there. So the next thing that we're going to do is I'm going to go over this process with you. I'm going to start this slide up here in a second on how a bill becomes a law. Now, and I'll just go through each part with you, take down some notes, and then you can use this as kind of your thing to go with as you go through this, and it'll help you learn. And you can use this in the project to help you write out what you need. And you can refer back to this because this presentation will be on Classroom. So if we go ahead and we look at this presentation here, if it'll load for me here, we'll go ahead and we'll bring up here. So the first thing you see here then is that a bill is introduced in the House. Now, all the information that you'll need to find about this will be on page 183. Okay, you'll see, and what you're going to need to look through here, and I'll go ahead and get my book real quick to show you this. What you'll need to do on this section when you go through on page 183, it'll tell you, and I'm not so much interested in what the different, you can list the different types of bills, and I can talk with you more about this tomorrow when I come into class. But if you look on page 183, what you'll see then, it'll talk about the different resolutions and everything. You don't need to really worry about that, but have a working knowledge of how a bill becomes a law and that thing, as far as how the bills are introduced. So write this part down then. So the bill is introduced on page 183. Next thing then you see then is that a bill is referred to committee. And we've talked about committees already, but what you're going to see is what happens in the committee, okay? And that'll be on 184 and 185. You definitely want to focus on, the fact that how it can be pigeonholed and how a discharge petition will work. Then it goes into subcommittee. Now, there's going to be 5 things that you need to know about what happens to a bill in subcommittee, and so you'll need to get that from this page on page 185. So be sure that you get all the committee actions from how a bill, what happens to a bill in subcommittee. Okay. Next thing then is that as a bill is reported by a full committee, and it's going to be, I'm sorry, that's the thing that has 5. The subcommittee is about the junket trips. I'm sorry, I totally messed it up. Reported by a full committee then is those 5 things that are on page 185, then the 5 ways that it can be reported by a full committee. All right. So you need to be sure that you cover each one of those 5 things there. Next, then it goes to what's in the Rules Action Committee. All right. The Rules Action Committee then you will find that on page 186. All right. And what the Rules Committee can do and how it schedules the bill for debate in the floor. Okay. And then you actually go then to the bill, how the bill is debated on the floor. That's on pages 187 and 188. Now, you need to talk to me especially about what are the limits on debate. What are the limits that you will see on debate? What happens there? Also talk about the procedures in voting. There's a couple different procedures that are used in voting. You'll see that in 188. It'll go from 187 into 188. Okay. After the bill is passed, then you're going to discuss what happens to the bill in the Senate. Now, they introduce into the Senate. Okay. You'll see how it's introduced in the Senate on page 189. Now, the committee process, you'll see that the committee process is the same on 184 and 185 as it is in the Senate, or as it is in the House. You still need to cover those. So the information that you get for the House, the committee process is going to be the same as in the Senate. You still need to talk about that. Okay. And then on page 185, we'll talk again about subcommittee and then how it's reported by the full committee on 185 there. All right. Still, all of that needs to be covered. That all needs to be covered. That all needs to be dealt with. All right. So you'll need to cover all of that again. All right. And then how a bill, since there is no, you'll see that if you look over on the other side, that how the Rules Action Committee is how a bill gets to the floor in the House. You need to discuss how the bill gets to the floor in the Senate. Okay. That's going to go in between those 2 areas there. So you need to talk about how the bill gets to the Senate. Okay. You talk about the full Senate debate. All right. Now that's going to be on page, that's going to be on 189 and page 190. You're going to talk about, and you need to talk about the filibuster and the cloture rule. Be sure that both of those things are going to be covered, and you're going to find that on 189 and 190. All right, and how the filibuster is used. All right, and then how it's voted on. Now, the voting method, I believe, is going to be the same. I'm looking here. I don't really see anything in there, but just know that the voting method is usually the same. Okay, again, there's 189 to 191. Okay, then we go on to the next part. Remember, we talked about this in the section on Friday, that if the bill is not the same, it goes in both houses. It goes through what's called a conference committee. So you need to tell me about what happens in a conference committee. That's on page 191 and page 192. All right. You'll talk about everything that goes on in the conference committee and how, after it's been approved by the conference committee, it has to go back through both houses for approval. That's on page 191 for the House. And again, the Senate approval on page 191 for the Senate. All right. After it's been approved by both houses, then it must go on to the president. All right. You will find out about the president and all the actions that the president can do. That's going to be on page 192. Now, he can do one of three things here. Okay. He can veto it, which Congress can override. All right. Then he can pass or sign the bill. All right. Or he can pocket veto. Now, there's a couple different things on this pocket veto. So there's actually 4 different issues of what can happen here. So there's actually an extra thing. I'm talking about how a bill can become a law without the president's signature. So you need to be sure that you get those details. Now, with all of this written out, I know this is a lot, and I'm sorry I can't be here to answer all of your questions today. But the main thing that you need to be doing today is, first of all, get all of this information. This is the basic skin and bones. The sub's going to give you here in a second is going to give you a sheet that will have the details of what I'm expecting. You can do however you want to do this. If you want to do it as a poster and a flow chart, you can do it as a storybook. You can do it as any kind of chart, like, and I'll show you some examples tomorrow, stuff that I have, and kind of give you some feelers. But today, what you need to be doing, and you can be working with a partner, no more than 3 in a group. You can work with a partner on this. Okay. And so in doing that, I hope that you will be able to figure out what you need to do. Get the information today, get all the information, fill in the blanks and all this stuff today. Tomorrow we'll talk about how you can present this. Just worry about getting with your partner today, getting the information down. Let's not try to screw around today. Let's get to work on this. Okay. So if you have any questions, I will be back tomorrow. Okay. So I believe that is all we need to do. If I can find out where my thing is at here. Well, we'll see what happens. Anyway. Okay. I think that's it. Hopefully it'll work somehow in here. I don't know how I'm going to turn my camera off. I don't know how I'm supposed to do this.